13 on your side, breaking news now.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tanner Holbrook, joined by Chief Meteorologist Samantha Jacks. We're coming on the air right now to bring you an urgent alert for those along the Muskegon River Floodplain below Croton. Those folks right now are being urged to evacuate. That was just sent out moments ago in a Nixle notice. I'm going to go ahead and read what that notice says. So it says water levels continue to rapidly rise on the Muskegon River. Anyone remaining in the floodplain below Croton Dam is directed to evacuate now. Public safety personnel are checking all impacted areas to ensure residents have left that area. They say anyone choosing to remain in the floodplain, Public Safety Services will no longer be able to come there to respond until conditions become safe too. Now, impacted areas should also expect power to be disconnected in order to protect their property and the electrical grid. And right now it sounds like we are following this. It's that Muskegon River floodplain, Croton Dam below the dam there. And we want to show you some evacuation information right here on your screen. So again, this is the Muskegon River floodplain south of the Croton Dam. Right now, public safety personnel are clearing that area. We've got public access areas closed in some areas. We're also learning officials have closed the river near the Hesperia Dam for unsafe conditions too. So basically what they're saying is if you live below that, in that floodplain area below the Croton Dam, you need to evacuate if you live within that impacted area. There is an evacuation center available at the Newaygo County Commission on Aging that's located at 93 South Gibbs in White Cloud. And if you need direct support, you're asked to call 211. And if you have an emergency, of course, call 911. But Sam, we've been seeing this rain, of course, the entire week. We've had a lot of rain in the last week and a half so far. And we've seen these issues kind of pop up over and over where they thought, you know, something like this could happen, where we could see an evacuation put into place here. And of course, this is something that we've been monitoring. So I guess, what are you seeing on your end of the weather side of this?
Yeah, so I just checked the current gauge levels right now, right? They're constantly updated, constantly being fed. And right now we're sitting at 12 feet. That pushes it into major flood stage. For perspective, Tanner, I updated a graphic at 7:50 this morning. They were only in moderate flood stage, and now they've pushed into that major flood stage above what was projected for the Croton Dam area. The other thing that's really important, right, when we think of a river basin, we always want to think about what is downstream from that location. So we have the Croton Dam, and then downstream from the Croton Dam is going to be Newaygo. So Muskegon River at Newaygo is going to be the next location downstream from that, because water is going to flow down. And so that's going to be another area that we will watch for projected increases in flooding rapidly and potentially faster than what was originally anticipated. That is something that's already being projected on some of my models here. Downstream of Newaygo is going to be Muskegon River at Bridgeton, right? So the water is going to keep flowing down. We of course don't have those immediate evacuation orders in those different locations at this point in time. These are all of the different flood reports that we have ongoing on our map right now. And so it is the portion of the Muskegon River currently located in southern portions of Newaygo County that we're watching really, really closely. And of course, right there along the Muskegon.
This is a graph of the most recent and
so what you're seeing here right now is the graph of the most recent gauge levels. It's a little bit difficult to read, but what you'll know is that our level right now is sitting at 11.8 feet. Flood stage, major flood stage, is at 12 feet. So it's really, really close to sitting at that spot. Regular flood stage is at 9 feet. So we exceeded that multiple days ago. It was actually not set to originally crest until closer to Friday night into Saturday morning, but we're already exceeding some of those projected statuses. This is one of many rivers that are currently sitting at that moderate to major flood stage. Right now, some of those additional spots are currently located all along that Muskegon River Basin in Newaygo County. We are also sitting at minor flood stage in portions of the Grand River as well. And this is all a result of the ongoing rain event that we have had since Monday. We have had multiple rounds, several inches of rain come down. And here are some of the things that you need to know when it comes to flood alerts. You need to review your flood action plan and make sure that you are staying informed of the forecast. Traveling really safely is going to be critically important. You want to slow down, avoid hydroplaning, and never drive through standing water. We have now had 3 reports of sinkholes stretched across West Michigan, 2 in Newaygo County, 1 in Berry County. With that being said, 3 separate reports of sinkholes is one of the big reasons that we say that phrase, turn around and don't drown. Flash flood actions that we're going to watch closely. Waters rapidly rising. Calling 911 for life-threatening conditions. If you're no longer feeling like you're in a safe scenario or that you cannot evacuate yourself, we are asking you at this point that you call 911 to get help with those evacuations and finding higher ground immediately. And again, that important keynote, it's a little bit repetitive, but turn around, don't drown. There are little differences between different flood alerts, right? You have your flash flood watch, which means it's time to prepare. You have your flash flood warning, which means it's time to take action. Here are some of the different flood alerts that we have ongoing across West Michigan. In addition to all of our river flood warnings, we currently have a flood warning in general for portions of southern Oceana County, northern Muskegon County, Newaygo County, and Mecosta County. And then statewide, I mean, Tanner, we've been talking about this all week long. Statewide, we have flood watches. Why is that the case, right? Why are we seeing these statewide flood watches? Well, we have received an immense amount of rain just over the last 24 hours. Let's look at some of those rainfall totals that we saw. The numbers aren't perfect on this, I will say. We're struggling a little bit with this graphic in terms of the number data being correct, but I want you to look at the highlighted shades and then the bar across the top. Anywhere that you're seeing shades of purple, red, or orange, that's in excess of 2.5 to 3 inches of rain that's come down in just the past 24-hour period, right? So that is continuing to suppress our system. The ground can only handle so much. And look at our current radar at this hour. We have active moderate rainfall coming down all across West Michigan. This rain is anticipated to last until at least 2 o'clock this afternoon, at least in an isolated form. But this is the most widespread rain that we will see today. You can see the surrounding areas of us not showing nearly as much showers in the forecast region. So thankfully, we are going to enter into a drier forecast here soon. But another thing that I would be remiss not to mention is just our spring precipitation totals in general. I mean, just this season so far, so this is from March 1st through today, April 15th through yesterday. We will add additional rainfall totals to this by the end of today. We have already received 10.5 inches of precipitation in places like Grand Rapids, Muskegon, 11 inches of precip. That is above 5 to 7 inches where we typically are sitting at for an average spring season. You start to factor this in, plus the above normal conditions that we received in terms of snowfall totals this past winter, and eventually those are starting to take a toll now on our river basins across West Michigan. But Tanner, for anyone who's just joining us, and can you give them a little bit of an update on what's going on?
So if you're just joining our coverage right now, we're on the air breaking into your normal programming to tell you that officials have just now ordered those who are in the Muskegon River Floodplain below the Croton Dam. You are directed to evacuate now. Let me give you a couple of areas that will be impacted by this, and this is coming straight from the notice that authorities sent across that area. So this would be the Leisureland subdivision in Bridgeton Township, Sycamore Flats in Ashland Township, 100th Avenue in Ashland Township, Old Women's Bend in Garfield Township, Anderson Flats in Garfield Township, Fright Hill in Bridgeton Township, Homesite Park in Bridgeton Township, River Ridge in Ashland Township, Bell Meadow Drive in Bridgeton Township, Devil's Hole in Brooks Township, and Cyril Street in the city of Newaygo. These are these areas that are specifically called out that officials are saying they are anticipating those areas to be impacted by floodwaters on the Muskegon River. Now, Sam was just walking us through moments ago why we're seeing all of this. Folks, I think we know why we're seeing all of this. We have had copious amounts of rain over the last several days. And right now, authorities feel at this point that those people in the areas that I have just named, so again, that would be the Muskegon River Floodplain, and I know I'm saying that as a general area, but this would be south of the Croton Dam. You need to get out of that home that you're in. Maybe you're there visiting or looking at the river, anything like that. Evacuate that area in Newaygo County so you can stay safe. Again, we want to let you know that the public river access sites along the White River near the Hesperia Dam are also closed due to unsafe conditions. Some safety tips. I think Sam was just mentioning this. Turn around, don't drown. We say it over and over, but we typically are saying it when we only see some high water over the roads. This is a life-threatening situation that you need to be aware about. So those choosing maybe to drive around barricades or walking in areas which are posted as closed, you might get a citation or you might even be arrested. We're talking about waters that could rise very rapidly at this point. Now that we are reaching a major flood stage here? Yeah, we are really, really close to major flood stage. It's interesting, Tanner, because the Croton Dam is actually one of the locations that's not quite at the major flood stage just downstream from it. The Bridgeton Dam, or the the Bridgeton area, the Newaygo area, those are spots that are already sitting at that major flood stage. Concerning to me, right? Because we're going to watch that water flow down that portion of the river and potentially push some of these spots that are nearing their crest or anticipated to near their crest Saturday morning, potentially see that occur earlier. Yeah, so would you say that that is why we're seeing the Hesperia Dam, that river area, closed at this point for safety as it's downstream? They're being proactive about this? Yeah, and it could go hand in hand. It also could be a separate situation that's ongoing, right? We knew that it was about 6 inches below reaching its threshold as of 5, 6 o'clock this morning. It's been actively raining, and so there are a lot of factors at play right now. But yeah, stretching from Newaygo County to Oceana County right now, and even down into portions of Muskegon County, we have to be really, really cautious. I can't stress enough how dangerous the threat of flooding can be. We say this phrase often: turn around, don't drown. Why do we say that phrase? It sounds so dramatic, doesn't it? I mean, it does. You might think what's beneath your car, beneath your feet, is 1 or 2 inches of water. That may be what it looks like. But what can happen is our infrastructure can only handle so much water. And we have had these heavy, excessive, high rainfall events happening day after day, really week after week for us here in West Michigan. And so the surface below it, right, the rock surface, soluble rock, eventually starts to erode away when it contains too much water, right? It works against it. And that's where we're seeing some of these sinkholes pop up across West Michigan. And so we say turn around, don't drown, because what may look to only be several inches of water, several feet of water, and maybe you and that truck feel like it can get through it, that may not be the case. And so you have to be cautious, heed the warnings, do not be moving barricades and those sorts of things. Yeah, so here's some more information. And of course, we were mentioning earlier that the Hesperia Dam was closed as well. So of course, sounds like we got a couple different situations here. The White River, what's happening now, and this is from officials. It says local officials and emergency management report water conditions to rapidly rise on the White River in Hesperia. Water is currently flowing over the spillway of the Hesperia Dam, may soon begin to topple over the dam itself. Water is already impacting the structure of the Division Street Bridge. So that's that situation. Muskegon River, different situation here. There are 3 USGS stream gauges used to determine the river levels. And as of 9 this morning, the Muskegon River, like you were just saying, nearing that major flood stage. And so that would be why we're seeing the Muskegon River floodplain there below the Croton Dam, ordered to evacuate. So if you're just joining us, that's kind of the situation right now. So if you are below the Muskegon River floodplain, on the Muskegon River floodplain below Croton, you are being directed to evacuate. Now, I understand we have a map, and let's go ahead and give you a visual whenever we can get that there. Again, these are, there's the Croton Dam on the right side of your screen. On the left side of your screen is where the city of Newaygo is, and you can kind of see how this all flows downstream there. So that is kind of the area of concern, is below the Croton Dam. Those are the areas around that river floodplain you are going to want to start evacuating at. And again, this is because we could at some point see these river Okay, we could see those river levels rise very quickly. And so if you are below the Croton Dam at the Muskegon River Floodplain, you need to start evacuating. We are going to wrap up our coverage right here on WZZM and return you to normal programming. But we are going to continue our coverage on 13+. You can download that on your TV and watch for free. We're going to be streaming this very active situation for you, as it is a very intense and serious situation. So, of course, be sure to tune in right there on 13+. We're also working on this in the newsroom, too.
Yeah, please stay safe, everybody. If you have any additional reports, it's so important to us that we receive them so we can pass them along to emergency services and the National Weather Service. The way that you can report those things is by texting us at 616-559-1310. That's 616-559-1310. Stay safe, and we will continue to keep you informed on all of our streaming platforms.
13 on your side, breaking news now.
And good morning, everybody. We are continuing our coverage of an evacuation alert right now in Newaygo County for some folks there. Of course, we just wrapped up our coverage on the air on WZZM, continuing it now on 13+. So here is what that evacuation order that was sent by local officials just moments ago. It says, evacuate now. Those remaining in the Muskegon River floodplain below Croton are directed to evacuate now. So if you are located within the Muskegon River floodplain south of Croton Dam, you are being asked, or more so ordered, to evacuate your area now. Right now, we know public safety personnel are in that area, clearing the area, and public access to many of those locations are closed. Here's a map on your screen. On the right side of your screen is where the Croton Dam is located in Newaygo County. You can see. Okay, we can see the Croton Dam there on the right side of your screen, and then Newaygo on the left side of your screen, kind of how it zigzags down through that area. I want to bring in an official from the, I guess, the Sheriff's Office joining us live this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. I understand we have you by phone. What is the situation that you're understanding there?
Currently, we're still experiencing rising river levels on the Muskegon River. We don't know what the crest of that river will be yet, and we're experiencing several road washouts.
Yeah,
we're having trouble getting to people and getting people out of their residence. What we're asking is that folks leave their homes now if they are in any part of the Muskegon River floodplain. We are considering shutting off power to the area, and we will at some point be unable to respond to emergency requests because of the road conditions. So if we can get folks out now, they will be much safer.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the two people you said you're trying to get. Are you meaning that you guys are in an active water rescue right now? Is that what you mean?
No, sir. We don't have any active water rescues.
Okay. Just making sure that people can get out is basically your main message right now.
Absolutely. The number of road washouts that we have now is concerning.
Okay. So right now, just want to kind of go back over, this is the Muskegon River Plain south of the Croton Dam. Considering right now shutting off power to the area, and you're saying those folks south of the Croton Dam need to get out of that area. And of course, I want to ask you kind of about how you guys have been monitoring this. What was the reason you guys pulled the trigger right now to issue that evacuation notice?
Well, our emergency manager, Ms. Abby Watkins, is watching the river levels and also speaking with Consumers Power regarding how much water is coming out of the dams currently. We're watching the river levels and trying to estimate what the crest may be. But at this point, with the continued rain, we can't even get a good estimate as to where this river is going to crest. So we're just trying to be proactive here.
I have Chief Meteorologist Samantha Jacks with me. She's got a question for you as well, Sheriff.
Yeah, I would like to know if we are looking at just general water levels rising and that's the concern, or are we looking at a concern to the structure of the dam itself?
We have no concern about the structure of the dam. This is strictly rising water levels from the continued rain.
Okay. Yeah, and of course, as you mentioned, we have rainfall right now in Newaygo County. We have rainfall across much of the 13 on your side viewing area right now, and this has been a major concern. At this point, Sheriff, what are your folks doing? What are the deputies in your office doing right now to kind of help evacuate people? Is there a method to the madness is what you guys are doing right now, or is this simply just get out of the way?
No, we've addressed certain areas that are specifically a concern, and we have deputies going door to door now. Deputies going door to door,
okay. And of course, how I guess, how long does that process take, or how much manpower for your office does that take to go door to door and get everybody out?
Well, we're using everybody that we have right now, along with the local firefighters. So what we're finding is a lot of people have left already.
Okay.
But
Is there
we're still trying to make contact.
Is there something that the surrounding communities can do to help you all out?
At this point, just getting the word out is the biggest thing. If they know anyone that is in the area, may need assistance, you can give our central dispatch a call. But the biggest thing is, if you're not in the area, stay out of the area. And just some thoughts and prayers would be appreciated.
Yeah, you know, when we talk about an evacuation, obviously this is going to heighten some senses. It's going to heighten some anxieties for folks. You know, do you anticipate this going past, I guess, the Muskegon River floodplain at this point, or are you just monitoring that situation closely to see if you need to make additional evacuations?
Correct. We're just monitoring it at this point.
Okay. Anything else that you think is important for everybody to know at home right now as we are starting the evacuation of the Muskegon River area south of the Croton Dam there? Anything that you think that we didn't ask you think needs to be told to the public?
Well, just a reminder, if you see a barrier across the road, you know, or water across the road, please do not try and cross it, okay?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, we thank you so much for your time, and we are sending you thoughts, prayers, and hopefully some sunshine here pretty soon.
Yeah, Sheriff Bob Mendham with the Newaygo County Sheriff's Office. We really appreciate you taking the time and giving us a call. We will hopefully be able to check in with you very shortly. And of course, as the sheriff was just mentioning, we do have a situation right now in Newaygo County where the Muskegon River south of the Croton Dam is currently under evacuation alert. The Muskegon River floodplain there is currently under an evacuation alert in Newaygo County. What he was just telling us is that this is only a concern of rising waters that are happening. It's happening quite rapidly, actually. And of course, as we could see from the graphs you've been looking at, Sam, all morning, these graphs have really shot up over the last couple of hours. Almost
nearly a linear spike, Tanner. I'm looking at the graph right now. It's officially entered into major flood stage, the Muskegon River at Croton Dam. And just a reminder, the projection of what we were anticipating to see actually was never supposed to reach major flood stage, yet here we are. And I know the graphic can be kind of small and hard to see in some spots there, but no, and this is actually a little bit behind what I'm seeing on my end. Sometimes these take an extra 5 minutes to get from the system, you know, that I'm looking at and into our graphics package. But right now it is sitting at 12.16 feet right now. Critical major stage is exactly at 12 feet for this particular location. And yeah, we officially exceeded that, and a rapid rise, you know, I mean, 7:30 this morning, we were sitting at, let's see, 6:45 this morning, we were sitting at 11.7 feet, and now we are sitting currently at 12.16 feet. So we are seeing a good increase here in the water levels, and then we have to continue to watch downstream from this, right? So we're expecting to see historic amounts of flooding in other locations. Now the Muskegon River at Everett is currently sitting at 15.5 feet. And then we are expected to see that crest come tomorrow evening and into early Saturday morning at 16 feet. There is the chance that might be a little bit outdated. I know that the National Weather Service, I've been in conversation with them. Let me go back to my chat with them and see if they've had any additional updated information. So we asked the question, you know, do you know anything about the evacuation surrounding the Croton Dam area? Any ideas on river forecast updates? And their response was that they're in their forecasting process right now, and that new river forecast will be posted within the next 60 minutes here. And so we will hopefully see some new forecasts, and that would be what updates this graphic that we have in front of you right now. But yeah, rising flood concerns, but not a concern of the structure of the dam. And I think that that is a really, really critical point here, because this could be a vastly different situation if we were actually seeing a failure of the dam itself, but that is not the case. It's just that these levels are at their brink because of the amount of rainfall we have received recently, Tanner.
Yeah.
And these are not our only locations that are currently underneath, different flood warnings. And let me advance things here for you. So on a broad note, we have widespread flood watches. What is the difference between the watch and the warning, right? The watch is, hey, be prepared. You might start to see some flooding. You might start to see some ponding in the roadways soon here. And then you have your advance notice, which would be that flood warning that is currently confined to southern Oceana County, Muskegon County, Newaygo County, and Mecosta County, right? And so we zoom in here. Embedded within that current flood warning, we also have river flood warnings, which are responsible for a lot of the spillage and a lot of the extra flooding that we are currently seeing. Zooming in here, this is the part of the river that we're talking about right now. I wish I could get it to zoom in just a little bit more for you, but that's as far as it wants to advance. Currently underneath that river flood warning until at minimum 12:30 on Saturday afternoon. And so if you look here, Croton is going to be in the upper corner, and then it's going to be downstream from that you see Newaygo, and downstream from that you see Bridgeton. Maddie, our producer in the back, do you have an update for us?
We were getting ready to check in with a reporter. It sounds like that reporter has been asked to move down the river because, of course, this is an active evacuation.
Okay.
Right? So that's what we're learning, is that the reporter that we had there, we're hoping to check in with them here in just a little bit, but we have a couple of viewer pictures that we could show you, so we could show you the active situations at hand. So you can see, and again, we want to stress that, yes, this is an evacuation alert in Newaygo County. This is a very serious subject. However, this is not an issue with the structure of the Croton Dam. However, if you're in the Muskegon River Floodplain, you're being asked to evacuate that area south of the Croton Dam. And this is why. We have some high levels there, and Sam was just showing us the graph, and all of this is making sense to what we're seeing. So you can see these river levels up there. I mean, it looks like this is in somebody's home.
Up to their knees.
Yeah, and this is so sad. To see the folks that live there, they live there day in and day out. You probably live there thinking you're never going to have to experience something like this, and here we are. Again, all of this being caused by all of the rainwaters that we have seen in the last week and a half or so, or I guess, also we've had high levels since we've seen basically snow melt. Since
spring has began, Tanner. I mean, we have been saying over and over again that this is a near record-breaking wet start to spring for everybody here in West Michigan. And these are the results of those sorts of things. We also have had these continuous heavy rainfall events ongoing.
Right. And we can hear it on the roof of our studio too right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
when we're seeing well above seasonable average events. And so this is something, you can kind of get me on my soapbox with this, but that we do see with a natural change as well as a human-induced change of climate. Because what happens is we are seeing these well above average temperatures. You might be saying to yourself, well, what in the world does that have to do with heavy rainfall events? Well, here's the thing. Warmer air can hold more moisture, more water than colder temperatures. So when we are consistently sitting with well above spring average temperatures in the upper 60s, in the mid 70s, like we have been since Saturday, Sunday of this week, that can hold more water content than your average spring temperature. So then you get that spring moisture, which we always see.
Right.
And the clouds can start to hold more rain than they ever typically do, and we get these increase in heavy, excessive, extreme rainfall events. We have been seeing that time and time again, to the point where it's almost not surprising us anymore, because we are consistently seeing rainfall reports of 1, 2, 3+ inches in a matter of a day, in a matter of hours at some times. And so eventually our infrastructure is going to take a toll on that. Yeah. We're coming off, Tanner, I mean, to put this in perspective, we're coming off of a summer and a fall that we were underneath complete drought conditions. Right. I mean, we had Ottawa County whose wells were running dry because we were so dry as a community. And just this spring, just the amount of rainfall that we have received in such a short period of time since March 1st, is causing this kind of damage across the area.
Yeah.
It's scary stuff, honestly.
It really is. So if you are just joining us, about 9:27 is when we first got the alert that Newaygo Emergency Services was ordering those in the Muskegon River floodplain below Croton to evacuate that area. I understand we have 13 on your sides. Aaron Sullivan joining us live now from that area. Aaron, I want to ask you, where are you at? What are you seeing? Tell us the situation where you're at.
Hey guys, good morning. Well, we're along the Muskegon River right now. We are at the downtown River Park. I know we've been asked to leave. We were a bit closer earlier, but we did kind of want to hop on here and talk about this evacuation. Like you guys have been saying, this is a level 3. I'm going to step out of the way so we can zoom in on the river down here. I know these river levels are rising very quickly. We were even in Hesperia this morning talking about just how much of a difference in just a day these levels can make. So we are here right now. Like I said, there's a level 3 evacuation notice. We are going to be calling dispatch after this to see if we can get a closer look, trying to give you all at home a better picture of what people are dealing with here. But I did just talk to Wisner Rents Canoes. That business is right behind us right now, and they evacuated their entire store. So they had a lot of canoes kind of stored out there. Matt, can we zoom in on that over there? So this was filled with canoes. Now this was all emptied just in case that dam breaks. Now, again, we don't want to cause any panic. These are things that residents are telling us, but they're just making sure they're taking every step they can to be extra cautious with this changing weather. So Tanner, Sam, we're going to call dispatch, and then we'll get back to you guys with hopefully a better picture of all of this going on. For now in Newaygo, I'm Aaron Sullivan, 13 on your side.
All right, Aaron Sullivan, thank you so much for that update. Of course, she's going to, like she said, she's going to call Central Dispatch there in Newaygo County, see what answers she can get for those folks there. But again, we are dealing with a flooding situation, an evacuation alert in Newaygo County. This is anybody that is south of the Croton Dam along the Muskegon River Plain there. Again, we were just taking a look at some viewer pictures where we were seeing river levels go into someone's house, and it looked like it was about a quarter way up that one door that we were looking at. It looked like a kind of an outside door that was, the river levels were growing there. And then you saw kind of the picture that Aaron was just showing us there along the river, where the river was kind of coming up on the road there at the beginning, or I guess at the flood stage there. Let's take a look at that river live. I understand we still have that. And you can see exactly what she was just showing us. You can kind of see how it's spilling over the banks there, kind of approaching that sign. And of course, this is kind of a safety thing. You know, Aaron was down there kind of close to the signs there, and we're understanding that officials are now trying to get people back away from those signs. So Aaron's in a safe location, reporting right now. She's again calling some authorities there in Newaygo County to maybe get some more answers as well. But again, I think the thing that we should take away from this is that the Croton Dam, the structure of it is fine. What is happening is that the river levels are rising so much and so quickly because of the rain situation we've been seeing. That's why we're seeing the evacuation alert in Newaygo County. So if you are still in your home along the Muskegon River Plain there south of the Croton Dam, now's the time to get out. Another caveat to this, and this is a little bit of good news, the sheriff that we just talked to a little bit ago was telling us that the folks along that plain, a lot of them have already gotten out.
Yeah. And
they're using their manpower and resources, the deputies there in Newaygo County, as well as some local firefighters there in Newaygo County, to go door to door knocking and making sure that everybody's getting out.
And that they already have all of their resources deployed. And so, you know, help them out. You know, evacuate now before you are put in a serious situation and then have to use up their resources further, you know, because you didn't evacuate early enough. That's really, really key here. Another thing that can happen when we have these heavy rainfall events, not only flooding, but also we have video of a sinkhole that occurred earlier today. Reports came in around 4 o'clock this morning that there was a sinkhole. A car actually fell into the sinkhole, and there was residual water at the bottom of the hole itself. The good news is that reports are that nobody was injured from this incident, but I mean, look at these images on your screen. It almost, I think Dave Cackley said this, it almost looks like AI generated images, because we just don't see
it's real.
things like this happen. But this is in fact real. Erin Sullivan went there, saw it with her own eyes. We've spoken to emergency crews since then, but just really, really scary stuff. There you can see the car being lifted and evacuated from the sinkhole. Really impressive that nobody was injured, thank goodness. But this is another example of that phrase, turn around, don't drown. We haven't spoke to the individual that went through this yet, so we don't know if there was sitting water on the roadways or if it was just that the structure of the road became so vulnerable because of the amount of rain that's come down over the last several days, and the sinkhole just came as their car went driving over it. That's details and information that we hope to be able to get for all of you going forward. Not to scare you, but just to give you that perspective of when there is sitting water on a road, you don't know how deep it is, and you don't know what the structure and the foundation of that road is below it. This is just one of several instances that we have seen across the state of Michigan, right? We have the Sheboygan Dam, who's the levee near there, I believe, is what had some unstableness to it. The tunnel of trees in Michigan.
We saw a washout there.
The bridge itself collapsed. I mean, such a popular tourist destination here in Michigan, and a lot of what's happening in northern Michigan is in conjunction with the amount of snow they've received, in addition to that, the ice storms that they've had. So just a lot jam-packed in our forecast right now.
I think when we think of rain, we think of like, oh, it's just rain, right? This is the time when rain turns serious.
Oh, our grass is growing.
Right, exactly. It's spring. We are used to the spring showers bring May flowers, right? This is when it all turns serious here. And again, this goes to show just how powerful our weather that we receive in West Michigan can be. Again, there is pictures of the river that we are talking about, the river in question, the Muskegon River area south of the Croton Dam. You can see just how the flooding has already started to take hold with this home. And this is what I was talking about earlier. It looks like several inches of standing water inside that home. I believe this is actually the location where Erin Sullivan was just at moment. Erin actually sent that picture into us, so that makes sense. And you can kind of see where the river levels are growing in that area. So again, if you are just joining us, about an hour ago, we received a notice from the Newaygo Emergency Services just saying that those south of the Croton Dam and the Muskegon River floodplain, again, below the Croton Dam, ordered to evacuate. We were just talking with the sheriff not long ago. He was telling us good news. Everybody, a lot of the people along that area have already started to get out. But if you are still in that area, again, this is Croton Dam, south of that, so you can see downstream. I keep saying south, I should be saying downstream. But again, Newaygo County there, and you can see where it runs into Newaygo there. That's kind of the area that we're talking about. And I'm going to pull up the information that I had just started to talk about when we were on TV earlier, on WZZM earlier. So I want to list off the areas impacted. So if you are in any of these areas, you need to start evacuating, because this is what officials in Newaygo County are saying. Anticipate the following areas to be impacted by floodwaters on the Muskegon River: Leisure Land Subdivision in Bridgeton Township, Sycamore Flats in Ashland Township, 100th Avenue in Ashland Township, Old Women's Bend in Garfield Township, Anderson Flats in Garfield Township, Fright Hill in Bridgeton Township, Homesite Park in Bridgeton Township, River Ridge in Ashland Township, Bell Meadow Drive in Bridgeton Township, Devil's Hole in Brooks Township, Cyril Street in the city of Newaygo. The following roads are closed due to washouts or water over the roadway as of 3 o'clock yesterday: Division Street Bridge or Maple Island Road in the village of Hesperia, Lee Avenue south of Lake Drive in Sheridan Township, there's a culvert failure, Osborne Avenue south of 32nd Street in Dayton Township, Ramshorn Drive south of 32nd Street in Dayton Township, Luce Avenue north of 32nd Street in Dayton or Sherman Township. It kind of straddles that area. Comstock Avenue near Adams Street in Denver Township, Baldwin Avenue between Baseline and 8th in Sherman Township, 112th Street between Fitzgerald and Dickinson in Bridgeton Township, and Bridge Street Bridge in the city of Newaygo. Again, those are the areas that officials, so the emergency management folks there in Newaygo County, are saying need to either get out of the way, or there could be a washout or some sort of issue over the road there. Those roads that I just read, those are going to be the washouts or water over the roadway. But the subdivisions in specific areas that I just mentioned before those roads, that is what needs to happen, where you are starting to get out of that area, and that evacuation needs to start. So they are again monitoring the Muskegon River. They are expecting to see major flooding on the Muskegon River, with river levels cresting over the next couple of days, so anywhere between Friday and Saturday. That's why we issued the weather impact alert for Saturday. And then, of course, you need to expect flooding conditions. And this is what they're saying on this push alert that they sent, the Newaygo County Emergency Services folks did. Expect flooding conditions similar to, if not a little worse, than the April 2014 flood. That is what they've said. And expect Maple Island Bridge to be closed if river levels reach over 17 feet at Bridgeton. Now, there is another situation on the White River right now. They're just monitoring that area right now on the White River. And of course, they're asking you, if you live along the White River, be prepared to take action, because that is another river they're monitoring very closely right now.
And that's near the Hesperia Dam, if I'm correct, right?
I believe that's correct.
And so that straddles between Newaygo County and Oceana County, and then it would be, again, downstream from that, that we will watch, again, for additional issues. This is actually a live camera that we have over the Hesperia Dam that we've been monitoring really closely. You can see the water levels have actually completely submerged what typically would be, I believe, an area you would stand on to be able to watch and fish off the dam.
Here's what they're saying. Sorry to interrupt, but here's what they're saying about the White River. Local officials and emergency management report water continues to rise rapidly on the White River in Hesperia. Water currently flowing over the spillway of the Hesperia Dam, so I'm assuming that's what we're seeing now, and may soon begin to overtop the dam itself. Water is already impacting the structure of the Division Street Bridge upstream of the dam. So that is the information specifically for the White River near Hesperia. So they're just monitoring that area. No need to evacuate. You need to be prepared in the White River area near Hesperia. Different story on the Muskegon River south of the Croton Dam, though.
Yeah, it's a different story, and it's really important to have a good baseline understanding, right, of the way that rivers work and the way that rivers flow. When you look upstream of a river, you're not necessarily going to see the impacts moving that direction. I mean, we could still see impacts upstream of something, but it would likely be unrelated to the situation that's happening, if that makes sense, downstream from them. I do have some flood alert maps up on my system that we can talk a little bit about, as well as some rainfall totals that we can look at together. And so we have our ongoing river flood warning for all of the portions of the Muskegon River inside of Newaygo County. That's from Croton, Newaygo, down through Bridgeton. This warning lasts until 12:30 in the afternoon. We are waiting for some new messaging from the National Weather Service. They said probably about 20 minutes ago that they're working through their forecasting process, and that they would be giving us some additional information within the next, I would say, probably 40 minutes at this point. What are some things that you need to know, right? You have your river flood watch, which means there's the potential for flooding along the river basins. A lot of the areas, though, right now that are underneath the river flood warning means moderate to high impacts along those river basins and streams, which is exactly, of course, what we have ongoing across the area right now. And I want to show you here a look at some of the continuous rainfall that we've seen, and this is just over the past 72 hours, okay? So let me put some numbers on here for you. Anywhere you're starting to see the darker shades of orange and yellow and red, that's nearly 5 inches of rain in northern Newaygo County. Let's click just a little bit to the south of it. See what we get. 4 inches of rainfall there. If we look in northern Muskegon County, they've had 5.5 inches of rain come down in that location over the last 72 hours. Northern Kent County, 3 inches of rainfall. Another area that we're watching is going to be Comstock Park. It's projected right now to reach at about 17 feet. Their historic rate in Comstock Park was just over 17 feet. So we're going to be getting really, really close to that by Saturday morning. And then lastly here, just some additional rainfall totals, 3.5 inches in Ottawa County, 4 inches of rainfall, southern Ottawa County, northern Allegan County. That's 72 hours of rain That's likely more than our typical seasonal rainfall totals for early spring.
And I just want to pass along some information from our crew out in the field. I just got this notice on my laptop that our photojournalist there, who is reporting with Aaron Sullivan, is saying that the city of Newaygo is saying sirens will be going off in about 10 to 20 minutes. That was about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
So any moment now, between now and 10 minutes from now, if you are in the city of Newaygo, you will hear the sirens go off. This is exactly why. We have an evacuation alert along the Muskegon River Floodplain south of the Croton Dam. I just wanted to pass that along because I know people are you're gonna hear those sirens and wonder what's going on.
Here's a really important tidbit about our emergency sirens is that they are not just used for tornado warnings. And so when you're hearing this and it's actively raining outside, it is not being used as a warning of severe weather. It is, I mean, in a form, right, of flooding, but it's not being used in a form of tornadic activity or strong damaging winds. It's being used to help get the information and the messaging out that they are evacuating those communities.
Yeah, so it is almost about to turn 10:30. If you're just joining our coverage right here on 13 Plus, we are continuing to follow breaking news in Newaygo County. There is an evacuation alert, and you're going to hear us say this a lot, folks. This is life-saving information, so I think the main message we want to get across is that we're here to give you that life-saving information, and that is an evacuation alert south of the Croton Dam, I guess downstream of the Croton Dam, on the Muskegon River area. So if you're in that floodplain along the Muskegon River, you need to evacuate. That is the alert that has been sent out from emergency management folks there in Newaygo County. We spoke with the sheriff of Newaygo County not long ago. That was Sheriff Bob Mendham. He was giving us some really good information talking about how the Croton Dam is not at risk of breaking. That is not what this evacuation alert is for. What this is for is we have so much rain coming down right now, and in the last several hours, we have seen those river levels spike to such a high degree that it's now in a major flood stage. Just to give you some perspective, as of 9 o'clock this morning, one of the USGS stream gauges in Croton was at about 12 feet. The one down in Newaygo was about 15 feet. USGS Bridgeton stream gauge was at 16.56 feet. And of course, flood stage in that area specifically is at 13 feet. So we're talking major flooding areas, major flood stages. Okay. Say that one more time, Maddie. Okay, so a little clarification on the sirens. Originally, we had told you the sirens would go off in 10 to 20 minutes. That was originally per our crew in the field. And now we're learning that the sirens will go off if the dam is failing. So if the dam is failing, we will hear that siren go off in Newaygo. Again, that's the city of Newaygo. We just got that clarification in from our crew in the field.
And that is something that both emergency management of Newaygo as well as, who was it that we spoke to on the phone?
That was Sheriff Bob Mendham there in Newaygo County.
So we have two different sources that have both told us that it is not the structure of the dam that they're concerned about at this point in time. That is not to say that that couldn't change and that if that siren goes off that you shouldn't heed that warning. Things can change rapidly in situations like this. Our structures, our infrastructure is not built for the amount of rain that we have received recently. So always, always take warnings, alerts, any sort of siren seriously, no matter if that information it has changed from what you previously heard. So I'm working right now on updating some graphics on my end, Tanner. Do you want, while I update this, to just run people back through of the critical areas that do need to be evacuated in case they're just joining us?
Yes, let me get back to that. So again, if you are just joining us, here are the areas that officials are talking about right now in terms of evacuation alerts for Newaygo County. Again, if you are in the Muskegon River floodplain, you need to get out of that area downstream of the Croton Dam. So the areas impacted here along the Muskegon River that will be impacted. Leisure Land Subdivision in Bridgeton Township, Sycamore Flats in Ashland Township, 100th Avenue in Ashland Township, Old Women's Bend in Garfield Township, Anderson Flats in Garfield Township, Fright Hill, Bridgeton Township, Homesite Park in Bridgeton Township, River Ridge in Ashland Township, Bell Meadow Drive in Bridgeton Township, Devil's Hole in Brooks Township, and Cyril Street in the city of Newaygo. Those are the areas that officials anticipate that will be impacted by the floodwaters on the Muskegon River. Again, the Croton Dam is fine. The reason we are seeing this evacuation alert go into place in Newaygo County in those areas and along that Muskegon River floodplain downstream from the Croton Dam is because we have those high river levels rising so fast because of all the rain that we've had. You see a number down at the bottom of your screen. You can always text us at 616-559-1310. Please, if you have any videos or pictures or you're going out to take some, do so in a safe manner. We don't want you out there if it's going to threaten your life, okay? So if you've got some pictures and you happen to grab some, again, we had a picture from inside a home earlier that had some flooding, some standing water in it. And it looked by that picture, the water was coming. You're going to see it here in just a second. The water was either at her shins or above that person's shins, okay? So you're getting ready to see that picture. I believe it's the one right after this. Here's a video. Yep, right there. And you can just see how high the water is in that person's home, which is so sad. And I would imagine that's not the only home being impacted by these floods there in the Newaygo County area. The other thing that we want to mention too is that the Muskegon River is expected to crest possibly Friday. It could even spill in over to Saturday. Right now, we are waiting on the latest forecasting from the National Weather Service. Last check-in was about probably 25, 30 minutes ago with them. They said at that point they would have an update in 60-ish minutes. And we are expecting flooding conditions. Officials are there in Newaygo County to be either similar or a little worse than the April 2014 flood. So we haven't seen this type of flooding in that area for about 12 years.
Yeah, it's been quite some time.
Yeah.
Here's what we currently know right now about the status of the current flood levels along the Muskegon River. So right now we have Bridgeton, who is actually still in moderate flood stage. It hasn't pushed to major flood stage yet, sitting at 16 feet. We have Newaygo sitting at 15.7 feet. Newaygo is not expected to crest until Saturday morning, very, very early morning hours, at around 18 feet. Then we have the Croton Dam, which actually, this is what the National Weather Service, when we say they're working on something, this is what they're working on. The Croton Dam is currently sitting at 12.16 feet. It is actually anticipated to crest at 11 feet on Saturday. So you can see that's some outdated information that now they're working on a new forecasting process to come up with better projections in terms of what's going to happen with the cresting as we head into Saturday. But we've already pushed into major flood stage, only forecast at this point to go into moderate flood stage, right? So the National Weather Service is working with the latest information that we've got, as well as the latest rainfall totals that we've received, and moving forward from there. Everett is currently sitting at 15.5 feet, and its crest is set to hit 16 feet on Saturday. So again, this information isn't perfect. It does show us exactly where we're at currently. It also shows you what flood stage is. You can see we are well above flood stage in all of those locations listed along that portion of the Muskegon River. And then of course, when it is anticipated to crest overnight Friday and into Saturday, those are the numbers that we're going to see an update to from the National Weather Service here shortly.
You know, we were looking at that graph earlier that you had shown, just kind of the juxtaposition of 6 a.m. earlier this morning versus now at 10:36. Yeah. And I think that's really the telling picture here, is that is how quickly this situation can change. Also, information can change very quickly. Every time we get into these breaking news situations, things change very quickly and very rapidly.
Right.
And that is why we have reporters out in the field right now looking at this information. Not only that, but also checking on the river itself and making calls to get you the latest and updated information. So let's get out to 1300 Side's Aaron Sullivan, who actually just had to move again. Aaron, good morning to you. What are you seeing out there right now?
Hey Tanner, good morning. No problem with moving at all. We know everyone here just wants everyone to stay safe. We've seen a lot of Newaygo residents coming down to the river to get a good look at the flooding because they know a lot of people along the river are going to have to evacuate. So we did hear from people who said if people are crossing the cones, any barricades that are up telling people to not trespass, if they are found by law enforcement back there, you could get fined. So something to keep in mind. If you are wanting to see the flooding right now, definitely go from a bridge. We're actually on a bridge right now on West Star Road. So definitely make sure you're staying safe. don't get too discouraged if people are asking you to move. At the end of the day, we just want everyone to stay safe. Now, what we're looking at over here, obviously, is the Muskegon River. I even want you to zoom in, Matt, on that pipe over there. That's just all of the runoff from nearby areas. I had one resident come over to me, and she's like, hey, if you guys go live and show this, you've got to zoom in on this. She is one of the neighbors over here near West Star Road, and she said she has not seen something like this in more than a decade. So a lot of residents are extremely curious as to what this means for them. We know people are being asked to evacuate. However, there's a lot of Newaygo residents that live on a hill, so a lot of them feel a bit at ease, but of course some of them have loved ones that live along the river. I even spoke to a business owner who was evacuating his business. He has a canoe rental business, and in the back of his business he has dozens of canoes that always sit out, but he said, we got to put these inside just in case anything happens. He doesn't want those to float away. Now, like Sam and Tanner have been talking about the statistics of this, but we even had 13 on Your Side's Micah Cho live last night at the Hesperia Dam. I know that's not where we are right now, but it really goes to show just the difference 24 hours can make, because we were talking to a gentleman there who's been monitoring the river, and he said even overnight the level has gone up significantly. So this is definitely rapidly changing. Again, we are here in Newaygo. If you're just joining us, we have been driving all over Newaygo County this morning. Tons and tons of closed roads due to flooding. So even if you're not coming over towards the Muskegon River area, that's something you need to look out for. Even we were just in Fremont, there was a sinkhole. So there's a lot of action going on here in West Michigan today, but one of the key things is make sure you're not getting too close to the river. If you're asked to evacuate, please be safe. Listen to law enforcement. We've been talking to Newaygo County Dispatch about what exactly we should be doing in terms of bringing you this news. And they said make sure you are at an elevated place, looking at the river, and not getting too close just in case of an emergency. And as always, you don't want to be fined or cited for getting too close. So just a few things to keep in mind. If anyone has any footage of flooding, it's also something you can send to our station. We'd love to share that on our streaming platforms and on air, just to keep people informed over here as to what exactly Newaygo County residents are experiencing right now. But our photographer, Matt Main, and I, we are going to be walking around Newaygo trying to ask residents what their plan is in case they do have to evacuate. But like I said, one of the residents who I talked to earlier said she hasn't seen something like this in more than a decade. So definitely something crazy that they're seeing over here. They're not used to all of this flooding. So we're going to be talking to them, seeing what their plans are, and hoping that everyone is staying safe. For now in Newaygo, I'm Erin Sullivan, 13 on Your Side.
All right, Erin, thank you so much. We're going to check back in here soon. Of course, she's reporting right there along the river. She's now above the river looking down. And in that shot, you really could see the flooding approaching some of the trees that I presume are in the water there, and just how high those river levels have risen. And also you have that bridge that goes across the river there that we could see in the background, just how close the river is to that bridge. Stunning images along the river. Again, if you are just joining our coverage, it's about 10:40 this morning. Evacuation alerts now in place in the Muskegon County, Muskegon River, that is. So the Newaygo County is where we're at. Muskegon River Floodplain, downstream of the Croton Dam. Let's get to the Bridgeton Township supervisor, Jason Mansfield. He's joining us by phone right now. Jason, good morning to you. Thank you so much for being with us. What is your understanding from your perspective there in Bridgeton Township of the situation at hand right now?
That water's coming up rapidly, and evacuation orders.
Okay, it sounds like we're having a little bit of feedback, so bear with us as we continue to talk to Jason here. So again, these evacuation orders are in place. What is your crew doing or monitoring right now as this situation is happening? All right, sounds like we're having some technical difficulties getting Jason. Jason, I'm going to ask the question again. You're the Bridgeton Township supervisor. Let us know what you guys are doing right now. What are your staff and people that you are surrounded by there? What are you guys doing right now to kind of react to this situation?
Right now, we closed the boat launches yesterday at 3 p.m. The county's handling all the evacuation.
Okay. And so when you guys, of course, you're a township there along the river. Can you talk about when these county alerts come in. So there's an evacuation alert on the table right now. Can you kind of talk about how you guys enact your action plan there in Bridgeton Township?
It's basically everything's handled through the Newaygo County Emergency Services.
Okay. And then what do you understand about the people in your area that live along the river? Do you know if people are still in their homes? Are they working on getting people out? What's the situation there?
I think people are taking it pretty seriously. A lot of people see that it's going to be pretty severe and worse, could possibly be the worst on record, and are moving to higher ground.
What are some of the things that you all are seeing and experiencing out there besides just the water rising? Like, what are some of the impacts that are resulting from that?
We're getting a lot of debris floating down the river.
Yeah, and that would make sense as to what we've been seeing over the last couple of days, especially with the storms over the weekend or over the last couple of days, pushing tree limbs possibly, or maybe even trees into the river. I want to ask you too, because you were mentioning we are going to see possibly some of the worst flooding in that area since 2014. Were you around in 2014 in that area to be able to see the impacts and talk about that? What was that like?
I didn't live in that area, but I can remember it.
Yeah.
I was raised in Hesperia and Fremont area. I just remember a lot of roads being flooded and a lot of people affected.
Yeah, it affected how? What do you mean by that?
Well, having to leave their home and homes being flooded.
Yeah, I mean, so sad situation. If there are people in that area that might be in that area, maybe down toward the floodplain there of the river, what is your advice to them right now? Is there a number they can call to get resources with your township, or a number with the county they could call to get resources that you know of?
Everything's going through the county at the present time. We do not have our own fire department.
Okay.
Or police department. We're just a small rural township.
Is there anything that the community in general could do, outside communities even, to help you all support you through this time?
At this time, just people to follow the evacuation orders.
Are there any specific routes? So if you are in, Bridgeton Township there, are there any routes that you would recommend people taking to evacuate at this point?
At this time, I would just recommend the main roads most as possible. There's a lot of closures throughout the county, I've seen.
Yeah. Can you name off some of the closures off the top of your head to make sure that people know what to avoid when they're getting out?
In Bridgeton, there was a spot on 112. I'd have to pull the map up. 112 between Fitzgerald and Dickinson is closed at the present time.
Okay. And then
I think that's the only closure in our township.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right, well,
I'm sure it won't be long, and South River Drive will probably be closed, if I had to guess.
Okay, yeah. And of course, while we have Jason on the phone here, we want to mention the areas impacted that the county has specifically named. This would be the Leisureland subdivision in Bridgeton, also the Homesite Park area in Bridgeton, Bell Meadow Drive in Bridgeton as well. Are those areas pretty close to, I would assume they're pretty close to the river, but can you kind of give us an idea of what those areas look like in relation to the river?
They're really low, close to the river, and the river's just growing into the areas.
Yeah. Okay. And then what are you doing? Do you live in one of those areas? Are you working on getting out of that or evacuating that area or anything like that?
No, I do not live on the river, so.
Okay. All right. Well, Jason, we appreciate your time this morning. Good luck to everybody in Bridgeton Township, but also in Newaygo County as well. We really appreciate your time. Is there any other things that you want to say to maybe the folks of Bridgeton Township or Newaygo County as a whole as we start to learn of these evacuations there?
Just stay alert and follow the orders that are given.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Jason Mansfield, who is the supervisor there in Bridgeton Township located in Newaygo County. We appreciate your time. All right, let's go now to 13 on your side's Michael Martin. He's joining us live right now. Michael, good morning to you. Where are you at and what are you seeing?
Good morning, Tanner. We are in Newaygo right now. We're at the Croton Dam. I'll step out of the way. It's right behind me. And we want to set the scene for you a little bit because we've heard a lot about this evacuation notice that's been put out for the area immediately around the river and around Croton Dam. This is above the dam. So when we're talking about the areas around Croton Dam being evacuated, the officials saying it is time to go now. Right now, they're talking about the portion below the dam. So what we're seeing now, this really isn't the area of concern. We are right now in the parking lot of a gas station looking at Croton Dam, and the people that work here, they live right around here as well, so they've been stepping out and looking at their docks, looking at the boat launch just across the lake. And Jake, I'll have you take a look at that boat launch. It's what they have been stepping outside the gas station to look at. They say that the docks over there, that's kind of how they've been marking the water levels rising. They say that if you look closely, that water is getting awfully close to eclipsing that boat launch in the dock and coming onto land. Now, again, like I said, this isn't the area that they are concerned about. They're able to let water pass through that dam, so it's not really where they're worried about the water coming onto land and causing those flooding issues. That's going to be below the dam. Now, there is a lot of discussion in town about the power, because as it sits right now, most of the people in this general vicinity have their power. The gas station is still running, they're still operating, they've got folks coming in and out, still buying stuff. They say they haven't seen much of a police presence. We've heard that they are going around and asking the folks below the dam to get out, to evacuate. They aren't doing it up here at this point, but that power, it is still on, and they're worried, is there a point that they are going to turn it off? In that evacuation notice, they said that they are going to turn that power off. Consumers planning to turn power to a portion of residents below the dam to not damage the electrical grid. We haven't heard that they are planning to do that to the portion above the dam, but there is concern that either that could happen or the power could naturally be kicked off if we start to see storm damage or severe flooding damage. So we're going to continue to monitor this section. We will go down below the dam, at least where it's safe to do that, and check on the conditions. But if you're wondering, this is where things stand right now. And it isn't rapidly getting worse, at least from our vantage point above Croton Dam. So we will continue to check things out, check on conditions, and bring those to you. But for now, I'll send it back to you in studio, Tanner.
All right, Michael Martin reporting live for us there, just above the Croton Dam. So below, downstream, where he is standing right now, is where that evacuation order is currently listed for the Muskegon River Floodplain there. And you heard Michael just talking about the worry behind the electricity in Newaygo County. We were literally just talking to the sheriff not long ago, and he was telling us that at this point they are working with Consumers Energy on if they are going to. So right now they're considering it. They haven't fully pulled the trigger on that, but they are considering shutting off power to the area. And actually in about 9 minutes, we are going to check in with Consumers Energy. We're going to have a representative join us live here.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear that, because I'm interested to find out more as to why we would shut the power off. I imagine that if power lines come down, obviously, in water, that can act as an energy source and electrify the water in general. And so I would imagine that it has something to do with that.
Yeah, and maybe there's a substation that we don't know about that could be flooded over or impacted in that area. We know sometimes when we have these emergency responses, they do things like that to mitigate other hazards there in the water, especially if the water is going to be that high. Again, we don't know that for sure, but we have been hearing from the sheriff there in Newaygo County that power is something they are considering to shut off? We're hoping to get those answers here in just a couple of minutes when we talk to Consumers Energy. Let's go back out live to Erin Sullivan. She's joining us there. Erin, good morning to you once again. What do you have for us now?
Hey Tanner, good morning. If you're just joining us, we are live in Newaygo. We are right along the Muskegon River. We're on one of the bridges right now. We're right off West North Lane Drive, and we know that there is a level 3 evacuation notice. So we wanted to give you a good picture on what things are looking like toward downtown Newaygo. Look at that. There's even a picnic table just going down the river right now. So definitely a lot of debris. We're seeing a lot of branches, picnic tables, furniture that's going down this river because we know this river is rapidly rising. So this is something to definitely take seriously right now. We just talked to law enforcement who said they are going door to door to make sure people are evacuated in those essential areas that need to be evacuated. We also know a lot of residents are curious about this. This river hasn't been this high in nearly a decade. That's what one resident told me, and she lives right along the river. So this is something that's definitely piquing people's curiosity. So they're coming down here to check things out. But the issue here is a lot of the parks that are along the river, those are closed down. So a friendly reminder from law enforcement here in Newaygo, if you are caught going in those restricted areas, you can be ticketed. So better save some money, stay safe, don't do that. Go to an elevated surface if you're curious to see these floodwaters. Now, like I said, we did speak with one resident, but we also spoke with a business owner earlier. He is right along the river as well, and it's a canoe rental business. He told me while they didn't evacuate the entire business, they evacuated certain materials that they keep outside, like their boats, like different things that they keep outside, because he is worried with these rising waters that it could sweep away more things, just like that picnic table that you just saw. So definitely something to keep in mind. Make sure you're staying safe. Look at this. Look at this down here. Let's zoom in on this tree. Wow. So we are seeing an increase in debris in the Muskegon River. I would say we weren't seeing a lot of things floating on by, but now we're seeing an increase, which to me indicates from being live here that this river is picking up more debris, more material on the shoreline, which is really interesting to see as this develops. So Tanner, Sam, I know you guys have been talking about the statistics behind this. We are just here bringing you what we are seeing. So always make sure we are all fact checking everything. If you are, concerned about anything that we're saying, I'm sure local law enforcement are more than happy to answer any questions, to help anyone out. I know we are bringing you information, but as always, we've been stopping local law enforcement, asking them to clarify some things for us. So they are more than willing to help and more than willing to keep you all safe. For now in Newaygo, I'm Erin Sullivan, 13 on your side.
All right, Erin Sullivan with the latest there from Newaygo. Of course, she is a little bit downriver from the Croton Dam.
Yeah.
Which, again, she's standing on that bridge looking down toward the river. So any area around that river downstream of the Croton Dam needs to evacuate. So if you are, maybe you have a house there, if you live there, it's likely you might be already seeing impacts at your home, because we were taking a look at viewer photos not long ago, seeing some actually standing water in some people's homes.
And
yeah, go ahead.
One thing that they had mentioned, Tanner, was that they actually were having trouble getting a hold of some people that they knew needed to evacuate, or that they were continuing to try to touch base with different people in the community to make sure that they had evacuated. So what I would suggest is that even if you are not in this area, family, friends, grandma, grandpa, right, if they're located around this, please make sure that you are checking in. Please make sure that they're not stuck or stranded. And of course, if you're not able to get in touch with them, my biggest suggestion would be to call 911, let them know their location, where they live, and that hopefully they will be able to go get to them and support, knock on the door, and make sure that everybody is okay inside the home. That's a really big recommendation that I have right now, because especially before they cut off power, if they do end up having to cut off power, we don't know that for sure yet, but if that is something that does happen, try to touch base with people sooner rather than later within those communities. Another thing that stands out to me, Tanner, is Erin mentioning the debris.
Yep, the tree floating down the river.
Yeah, because what that's showing, right, one, the power and the intensity of the water is picking up. Another thing that it's showing is that potentially it's expanding in terms of its width and picking up objects along with it and then dragging it into the river. So that is going to show and indicate the spill of the water is becoming wider along the river basin in general. And that's something that we'll continue to monitor closely. I mean, in my charts, I've seen almost a linear spike in the trajectory of our river levels. And that's not the type of spike that we want to see. It's actually in many locations exceeded the projected water levels. If we're able quickly, Billy, to take weather graphics here. I have a brand new video that was sent in from one of our Skywarn spotters. This is from Timothy Crawford. This is Holland Lake Road, just south of Minor. Now, he's an emergency responder. Let me double check this really fast, where he's from. So he is a Mount Calm County Skywarn individual who helps report weather action happening across the area, right? And so he sent this video in of Holland Lake Road, just south of Minor. You can see the road itself just completely not only submerged in water, but in flowing water. And that is something that always is incredibly impressive to me when these river basins overflow, is not only are these roads submerged in water, but flowing and moving water, which can be incredibly dangerous when that water actually has a pace and a cadence and a flow to it.
A question we've been having for the better part of an hour, more so hour and a half, I'd say, is are they going to shut off the power in this area? We're going to check in with Consumers Energy here live in just a few minutes. But first, I do want to go to somebody who we have on the phone right now. This is Leslie DeLotte with Little Mitten Landscaping in that area. Leslie, good morning. If you can hear me, it is great to have you on. Unfortunately, it's under these circumstances, but I understand that you are helping, along with your business, help evacuate people in Newaygo County along that river sheds. Can you tell us, from your perspective, what are you guys doing?
So basically right now we've got our trucks and trailers hooked up and ready to go. We're also prepared to help rescue animals. We've got some carriers, kennels, and cages for that. We're currently getting a hold of our more elderly customers to make sure they're okay and they don't need any help, and focusing on them first, but we are available for the whole community.
Yeah, Leslie, from your perspective, what are you seeing along that area? Have you seen these river levels rise rapidly? Have you seen flooding in some folks' homes that you might have been helping? What have been your actions and efforts so far?
So right now, in certain spots, it is starting to crest over their bank. Staying far enough from the house at this point, there are a couple where it is getting into the front part of their house where they're lower. We're just, going in, getting stuff up above the ground where it's safer. And I mean, it still might get wet, but essential items, people, animals, we're just really focusing on getting that out as fast as we can and to a safer place for them. Yeah, and we're offering our building to help store for right now and just doing what we can to get people out safely.
Yeah, Leslie, thank you so much for, one, your kind heart for doing that with your business. I think that's going to be needed for a lot of people there in that area. Just for perspective, where are you at right now? Just so we can tell people, you just described what you were seeing. Where are you at?
So we're over by the Pine Street boat launch, watching the water there. We've got people with cameras over by what they call Devil's Hole. So we're watching the water there to see if it crests over the bank and whatnot. We haven't gotten too close to Newaygo yet or many calls, but from the people I'm talking to, it's still not that high, but it is going to rise, and it's going to rise fast.
Yeah, and for context for our viewers at home, Devil's Hole is on the list that the Newaygo Emergency Services folks sent out. So Devil's Hole is closer in the Brooks Township as the address there that they told us. So that is, down there a little bit closer to the city of Newaygo. And of course, that is one area we are expecting people to be impacted by if they're around that river flood stage area. Now, Leslie, I guess, how can people get in contact with you if they need help? Are you taking phone calls right now to those folks? I obviously don't want you to get flooded with, requests for help, but also I think it's important if you're going to help people, how can they get a hold of you?
Absolutely, and no pun intended with the flooding part of calls, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They can reach us at 616-690-0523. We're on Facebook, and we're constantly checking that as well. So we got all eyes on phones, messages, and Facebook.
Okay, and that's good to know, Leslie. Thank you so much for that information. Now, how did you hear? Obviously, I'm assuming you kind of live in that area. How did you hear or, want to start helping people? Why did you just want to jump into action with your business?
We've always helped with the community. When school's canceled for a while, we'll get lunches to school kids that depend on the school. We do a lot with our elderly community, volunteer where we can. So this is just another call of action for us where we can help out and do what we can.
Leslie, I also want to ask you, were you around that area during the 2014 flood? We're hearing that from officials that this flood that we are about to see could likely be that or a little bit more than the flooding that we saw back in 2014 in April there. Do you know, were you there, and what did you experience if so?
I was actually in Grand Rapids during that flood. So I really don't know what to compare that to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Just checking to make sure, you haven't seen this before up there in that area. From who you've been hearing from, what are like the biggest impacts so far that you've been to the people that you've been talking to?
They're just, I don't even know. They're worried about their stuff. They're worried about getting out, and you just don't know what to do. So I feel like they're impacted in every direction possible and trying to find the way straight. So we're trying to help them as well and organize it and just get them out.
Yeah. All right, Leslie, anything else you want to tell our viewers right now, especially, as this is a life-threatening situation to many there along the Muskegon River floodplain? Anything else you want to say to everybody there at home?
Yeah, we'll be offering the service all night and into tomorrow, so you can consider us a 24-hour emergency service. Don't hesitate to call out. We're not charging for any of it. We just want to help people. We'd rather them be safe than anything else. So we'll have our phones on all night. I've got guys available all night, and we're just here to help.
All right, well, Leslie DeLotte, the owner of Little Mitten Landscape there along the Muskegon River, joining us live right now to kind of help folks, evacuate. Not only that, move their stuff. She's offering a place to keep things, especially as, a lot of people probably won't have a place to put their things if they have to leave their homes, especially those really essential items. Leslie, we thank you so much for your time this morning.
Something that you don't always think about, right? What are you going to do with your pets? What are you going to do?
And that's what she mentioned. Right.
Just really, really scary situations that are playing out for people right here in West Michigan. But heeding those warnings is going to be the #1 thing, and then using the resources around you that are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, another thing we're going to be checking in on is the power situation. It's been a question that's come up over the last hour and 15 hour and a half or so. And we're going to check in again here soon with Consumers Energy. Basically, what the sheriff was saying is that they have been considering shutting off powers to those areas. At this point, we don't have a lot of context as to why, but that is something that they are considering at this point. But again, you're talking about this time when we've had severe storms, rounds of them, and now we're dealing with this flooding situation. And those folks, I'm tired, and we live in Grand Rapids, right? So I can't imagine what these folks are going through there, especially the ones that have to leave their homes.
Absolutely. And, the power concern was something that Michael Martin, our reporter, brought up, and I do believe that he is ready to give us another look at what he's experiencing and maybe if he's spoken to anybody else.
He is. Michael, good morning to you. What can you tell us?
Good morning, guys. The conversation about power that you guys are talking about, it's the same one that people are having on the ground here around the Croton Dam. And we moved a little bit since we spoke to you guys last. We moved to the other side of the water to that boat launch that we were showing you from afar. But people are wondering that same thing. Is consumers or the sheriff's department, are they planning to cut electricity to the area? We know that as of about 9 a.m. this morning, on the evacuation notice that was sent out from Newaygo County, they said that there were considerations that they were planning to cut power to a portion of the area below Croton Dam. Now, the explanation that they gave at that time was it would potentially preserve the electrical grid. So there could be some concerns there about the infrastructure. The conversations being had in the gas stations around the area that we stopped in, very similar. You know, they're concerned that they are going to lose power. At this point, they all have power, at least the folks that we've spoken to above Croton Dam. They still have customers coming in and out. They still had the delivery folks coming in to stock the shelves, business as usual at this point, but they have that same concern. So we will, of course, continue working to find out whether or not that is going to happen, whether or not they plan to cut power to the area. But we have had a lot of people stop by just to get a look at the water over here. And just a reminder, this isn't the real concerning area, the area where they are evacuating folks at this point. We are above Croton Dam, so the concern for flooding is for the folks that are below that dam. But this is what the water looks like at this point. From the folks that I've spoken to, they said over the last 24 hours, the water levels have risen considerably, but this morning, not so much. They aren't seeing a rapid rise, at least above the dam. But it was interesting. The folks at the gas station I stopped in were using these docks at this boat launch as their marker for how the water was rising. They were stepping out back of the gas station every 10-15 minutes to look across the water, to look at these docks to see how much the water had risen. And at least this morning, they said it really isn't kicking up too quickly, but of course we are above the dam, so they're able to allow water to pass through. It was quite a sight when we drove past the dam. There were quite a few people that were stopped in the area and walking rather close to Croton Dam, and we know officials have recommended folks do not do that. There are a lot of Consumers Energy, I don't know a lot, but there were several Consumers Energy vehicles at the Croton Dam, so it's clear that they do have a presence there right now. What conversations are being had, unclear at this point, but we are going to continue checking in with them to see the latest conversations and decisions that they're planning to make in order to preserve the dam, in order to preserve the electrical grid functioning in Newaygo County. So we will continue to check out the area, see conditions as they change, and bring you any updates about the power or these water levels that we are watching. But for now, I'll send it back to you guys in studio.
All right, Michael Martin reporting live for us there, just above the Croton Dam. So again, this is kind of where the crux of where all of this is kind of the issue. Again, the dam is fine. The dam structurally is going to be okay, according to the sheriff there in Newaygo County. The issue is really all the flooding and the river levels that we've seen in the wake of all the rainfall we've had.
Correct. And so the Croton Dam is kind of being used as a locator,
right,
because everything downstream of that location is what's flooding. And that's where we turn to meteorologist Amber Tuardi. Amber, thank you for joining us this morning. What are some of the latest alerts that are ongoing in terms of flood concerns right now?
Yeah, so still dealing with flood watches all across the Lower Peninsula, but also extending up into the UP too. And then also just specifically looking at rivers. There's a lot of river flood warnings that are in place. And then of course, also that flash flood watch that we're seeing in Oceana County because of that potential dam failure that could happen up in Hesperia.
Wow.
So there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot that's going on when we're looking at some of these flood warnings as well. A lot of alerts that are really smattered across the region. Some of those little blue spots, those are river flood warnings. We'll talk about that in just a second here, but flood watch is in place for all of West Michigan. This will be remaining in effect through early tomorrow morning at 2 a.m., but still, it looks like a lot of those rivers could actually be cresting as we're heading into this weekend, possibly Friday night into Saturday. So we have been talking about a lot of these flood alerts throughout much of the day, but let's specifically talk about some of these river flood warnings, really zoom in and get a closer look at what these river levels are at currently and where they're projected to go. So this is what we're seeing at this point, river flood warning for Muskegon River and also up towards White River. The one specifically closer to White River, that is because of that potential for the Hesperia Dam to fail. So that's largely looking at the White River downstream from the Hesperia Dam over towards Whitehall. Looking a little bit further south, though, towards the Muskegon River, that river flood warning has been in place throughout southern Newaygo County, and we've been seeing that pretty consistently even last week as we had some pretty high levels out on that river, too. So zooming into some of these sites, specifically looking at the Muskegon River at Bridgeton. Now, right now, already seeing some pretty high river levels. At this point, already close to just shy of 17 feet, but it is expected to get closer to the 19-foot mark. Now, this already breaks the record for what the previous record, at least, was for this specific site. But keep in mind that this was put in about 7 or 8 years ago, so it does not take into account data from before that. But over the past 7 to 8 years, this is the highest that the Muskegon River at the Bridgeton site has been. Moving on to the Muskegon River at Newaygo. Now, I do think that we're going to start to see these levels really spiking as we're heading into the next couple of days, because already starting to see some pretty high levels that are above what the forecast was originally set to. Right now, just shy of 16 feet, currently still expected to get just shy of 18 feet, but with things already initialized higher than what the forecast was expecting for the National Weather Service, wouldn't be surprised by that number getting bumped up by the time that we see the next forecast, once again cresting into this weekend. So we've been talking about the White River, the Muskegon River, but let's move a little bit further south because Grand River still going to be seeing some elevated levels. Thornapple River to our south also going to be experiencing these river flood warnings. Both of these going to be remaining in place. Still looking at the river flood warning down through the Thornapple River to be lasting all the way through Wednesday of next week, 2 a.m. River flood warning at the Grand River, at least near Grand Rapids, that's going to be lasting through Saturday night. So let's zoom in when we're talking about these. Comstock Park, that is one area that we consistently talk about with flooding year after year. We've seen it time and time again, and expecting this to rise once again. Currently not looking too bad, still only in the minor flood stage, if not down into the action stage still, but it's expected to get closer to 17 feet, which would be less than a foot away from the record for that site. Now, this is an area that we see flood time and time again, year after year, so getting closer to that record, well, that definitely means something, especially for those areas and for those of you that live a little bit closer to the river and especially to that site. Moving to downtown, right now the Grand Rapids River site not looking so bad in the action stage, but still technically elevated, and it's expected to get much higher. Closer to 20 feet, likely to be a little bit above that as we're heading into next week, or rather this weekend and next week. But look how far off that is from the record. Not all that much. It's still only not too far off, just a little bit over a foot away from the record that was set back in 2013, that record being just shy of 22 feet. So we still are expecting some pretty high levels, even though that technically is still considered to be only in the minor stage, getting closer to the moderate stage. But just because we're not into the major stage does not mean that we're not going to see impacts, especially downtown and for those areas that are closer to the river that often see flooding around this time. So here's what we're looking at in terms of our river outlook for flooding. So right now, we're already seeing some pretty good flooding to the north. That's something that we've been talking about for days. There's been pictures coming out of Traverse City. There was that talk of the Sheboygan Dam failure as well, at least the potential failure of that with levees breaking. A little bit further south, we've still been experiencing some pretty rough impacts to the White River, Muskegon River, and that's where things are expected to still be a bit rough over the next couple of days. Still considered to be likely for a river flood outlook throughout much of West Michigan. Now, here's the good news. We do still see more rain on Saturday, but beyond that, next week at least is looking a little bit quieter, which is definitely what we need. We've had a lot of rain recently, and yes, Saturday we are going to be adding to that, and that could make matters a little bit worse. But hey, thankfully we are seeing a little bit of a break next week, it looks like. Finally, a bit of a quieter stretch, but before we get there, we are going to be experiencing still increased flooding, higher river levels across West Michigan, especially north of Grand Rapids.
All right, Amber, thank you so much. We'll check in soon. Good information there when it comes to some of our alerts that we have on the board right now, kind of painting the bigger picture as to why we're seeing the evacuation alert along the Muskegon River downstream of the Croton Dam. And again, we are listening to the sheriff's office there in Newaygo County. They've been telling us that a lot of people have gotten out, but right now they are going door to door along that floodplain to make sure people are getting out and being safe. We also talked to another woman, Leslie, with her business, who is providing a place for people to be able to store their things who have to evacuate. As we already know, we've seen pictures. We already know that people are seeing standing water in some homes already. So again, we're going to continue to watch this. We also have a really good video on what we say all the time, right? Turn around, don't drown. We sound like a broken record saying it every time we have high water over the roads.
And why do we say that? So this is a video shared from the National Weather Service of an example of why we don't drive through roadways that are flooded. So here this car goes. It moves into this, what seems like only a couple inches of water. And then you can see how quickly the car is being swept into the rushing water. And now it's starting to get into a situation where maybe the driver is no longer able to evacuate. Now you are stuck in the rising water levels, right? The car becomes fully submerged. And this is a reminder for a small car to be carried off. It only takes about 18 to 24 inches of rain to sweep it away. Actually, it takes only 12 inches of flowing water to move a small car, 18 to 24 inches for larger vehicles. And more than half of deaths from flooding each year occur in a vehicle in general. So this is why, right there, the perfect demonstration of why we say turn around, don't drown. And we have seen videos of roadways that are completely submerged in running, rushing water. It might surprise people, Tanner, that flooding deaths are actually the second highest type of death due to weather-related incidents. The first is actually heat, and the second is actually flooding. Okay. And so that is why we ask that people take it so seriously. Each year, and this is just some information from the National Weather Service, each year more deaths occur due to flooding than any type of thunderstorm-related hazard. And the Centers for National Disease Control and Prevention report that over half of all flood-related drownings occur when a vehicle is driven into hazardous floodwater. The next highest percentage of flood-related deaths is actually due to walking nearby flood waters. And so this is why things like Aaron Sullivan, our reporter out there, is consistently being moved away, because that is the second highest reason actually that people die due to flooding incidents. And it sounds kind of, blunt, but that truly is the case. People underestimate the force of water. Many deaths occur because the car is being swept downstream. But then in addition to that, it only takes a mere 6 inches. Think about that. That's not that big. Yeah. A mere 6 inches of moving water to sweep somebody off of their feet. What's underneath that moving water? You don't know. They've mentioned several times now that there is debris coming down the river. And so debris coming down the river, there's branches. 6 inches of moving water is all it takes to sweep a grown adult off of their feet. 12 inches of rushing water can pick up a small car, and move it down the river, and just 2 feet can carry away something like an SUV or a truck. So please never ever drive through floodwaters, and certainly be very cautious when walking next to them.
Okay, let's turn now to an important resource. If you are being evacuated from Newaygo County, that area, again, this is downstream from the Croton Dam there along the Muskegon River. In that area. Let's turn now to Michigan 211. We have Chad Vieser on from Michigan 211, a very important resource there. Chad, good morning to you. In this context, what services can you provide those folks that may be evacuating?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. And I guess the critical thing to understand when we do work with 211 is to have another person on the line that's trained, that's going to speak with the person, and then find, at least in this situation, sheltering where it exists. And then when people come back to their homes, then they have a chance to report damage, find people to help clean up their homes, that kind of information.
Yeah, so again, this is going to be a trusted voice on the other side of that line, helping those folks that are really going through a tough time. Can you give us an example of like someone calling 211? What would they ask for in this scenario?
I mean, for evacuations, it's obviously going to be sheltering. That's going to be a big one off the top of the line. So when you're speaking with a person, they're going to walk through what options are available. But, usually beyond that, there's some few other steps that you might need, whether, it's going to be a long-term sheltering. There are a host of resources that are out there. Those things change by the day. So having a person there that's going to talk with you to find what is real and what is accurate is a critical piece when you're in crisis like that.
Yeah, and a critical resource too. And we noticed that 211 was actually listed on the community outreach, or I guess the post that emergency service managers had sent out. 211's a listed resource there. I'm not sure if you're able to tell me, has 211 already been getting calls from folks there in Newaygo County?
Yes, everywhere. Newaygo and beyond the area. So it's getting busier, for better or for worse. And sometimes other lines get filled. People are calling 911 or emergency management offices. But to help them to do life-saving in the moment, and if you have the questions, 211's the place to go to.
Okay, yeah, and it's a good resource to have on hand. Again, it's just 211 there, 3 numbers, they're right next to each other, something people should really take down.
Now, what are sorts of things that you are all taking into consideration when someone calls? Like, for example, there's a difference between someone who's calling who maybe has a family of 4 and animals and they need help versus maybe someone who's by themselves or an elderly person. What are the types of different situations that you guys help them through?
I mean, you pegged it. That's exactly the issues to work through. Some people don't have transportation, so you might have to connect a way for a person to actually drive away from the home. Different shelters have different requirements. Some of them allow pets. It's not something that you just preload into a data system and you forget about. It's something that, as I mentioned earlier, changes. So making sure that you're able to have a conversation and then max it up for resources. Or if that resource doesn't exist, make sure that we're getting that information to emergency management as soon as possible so we can find help for a person.
What are some of the other services that people along the Muskegon River who are evacuating right now may need to take advantage of with you guys? Is there anything else that you think people should know about with the 211 service that if they're on the line with an operator, they should ask about?
I mean, you can ask about getting into the longer-term recovery, too. If you're evacuating, if your house does, end up with water damage, it's a long process, right, to go through cleanup. You might not have the resources available right away to work through some of that. So finding some of those resources out there, volunteer groups that help to clean up, whether it's food and clothing, that's what 211 is. It's a health and human services hotline. So, working through some of those long-term needs is where the real work starts to happen as well.
Yeah, can you talk about some of the area partners that you guys have that help people get directly connected with the resources that are available?
Yeah, it's a lot of sheltering in this moment. So American Red Cross and other volunteer groups are called VOADs. So voluntary organizations that are active in disaster. I work with them and work on a board with them to make sure that we're plugging resources in as possible. Your community action agencies, your local United Ways, and there's that list starts to get long. We could be here for a while, but that's the kind of groups of people that really start to activate beyond just emergency management offices about this time of the year, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a well-connected resource that can help in a lot of ways.
So you had mentioned that along the Muskegon River in Newaygo County, you're yielding calls, but what are some of those other locations that you're answering lines from?
So we cover the entire state, if that's what you're asking. So
yeah,
I live up in the River City area.
Are you still yielding a lot of flooding calls from different locations too?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately. Grand Traverse County, Mayo, Sheboygan, the UP. It's been a busy couple days.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. Well, Chad, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else we didn't ask you that you think is important for the folks of Newaygo County that are evacuating right now that you think that they should know?
I think emphasizing that it's as easy as 211, just those 3 digits. If you want to text us, it's 898-211. Please use us.
All righty. Chad with Michigan 211, we appreciate your time and thank you so much for the valuable resource that those folks, again, sounds like they're already taking advantage of that. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. 211 again is that number. And of course, you can text that line. You can find that information too on mi211.org as well. We want to pivot now. This is an interview that we've been hoping that we would get to do here over the last 2 hours that we've been on 13 Plus with you, doing this live coverage of the evacuation alert in Newaygo County. We have Brian Wheeler from Consumers Energy joining us live now. Brian, thank you so much for your time. I know it's got to be busy for you guys. We were hearing that Consumers Energy crews are already on scene near the Croton Dam. What can you tell us is the thinking, or what can you tell us is the situation on the consumer side of the evacuation alert there?
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you for helping get good information out to people right now. There's a lot going on, of course. So the Croton Dam is one of 13 dams that Consumers Energy operates across the state. And I just want to let you know, for starters, that our dams are operating as they should right now. We're committed to safety. Our dams are structurally sound. They're going to be fine today and through this week. We are working to make sure we're communicating with local communities. And of course, in some places, there are flood warnings right now. That's not because of the dams themselves. We're letting water continue down the river. But of course, the fundamental issue is the fact that we've seen a lot of precipitation and continue to see a lot of snow and ice that are melting off that are contributing to those high water levels.
Yeah, and I want to ask you too, of course, with the Croton Dam, we have been hearing, at least from Newaygo County officials there in that area, that there's a conversation right now taking place on whether the power should be shut off in that area. Is that something that Consumers is considering right now?
Yeah, I don't know specifically about that, but I do know that we're having conversations with local emergency officials in areas where there could be flooding or extreme water damage. So we are prepared when necessary to turn off power in certain areas if there's a high degree of water damage or flooding. So at this point, we've not activated anything that I'm aware of. We will communicate. We will work with our local emergency partners so that people understand what's going on. We strive to make sure we're limiting that impact if we are in a situation where we're asking people or we're discontinuing power in any way. So at this point, I would say stay tuned, keep in touch with your local resources with Channel 13, and know that we're working with our local officials. Our dams are operating as they should. And if there's a need to communicate locally about any other impacts, we'll be doing that for sure.
When you say the dam is working as it should, I guess, just familiarize people at home what the process, or I guess what the purpose of a dam is and how that works into the electricity grid.
Absolutely. We generate electricity from various sources, right? Natural gas, solar, wind, and also our dams. These 13 dams provide electricity that serves all Consumers Energy customers. So fundamentally, their job is to work as generators, making electricity. And really, in many cases, most of the cases, the dams simply are a conduit. Water goes through the river, goes through the dam, and continues on its way. We don't hold back water flows in any significant way because we don't want to damage or change the natural course of the river. So that's something that's important to understand. Our dams are standing, they're working as they're supposed to, they're built to be available and doing their jobs, even in the most extreme conditions like what we're seeing right now. So there's a lot going on. There are some private dams in other parts of the state where that situation may be different. But if you're a neighbor of the Croton Dam, know that we're going to be there on site doing our job. The dam will stay as it should. And then, of course, listen to your local officials for other flooding or other impacts.
At this point, do you think there is a scenario in a case where you guys would shut off power in that area? And if so, what would that be?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly. I think we work to, like I said, really limit the impact. I know in Osceola County and Everett, I believe there are 3 or 4 residences where we have disconnected power. So very limited impacts here in that perspective. But what I would say is, your first concern, of course, is going to be flooding, a lot of water coming into rivers and systems across the state. So that's the fundamental first concern. We communicate with our local leaders, with emergency officials to find out, if there are properties or homes that are going to be significantly underwater or causing any sort of public safety concern. That's where we will step in.
Yeah, we know that we have Consumers Energy crews on the ground there at the Croton Dam. We saw a reporter had said that they saw the crews there. If you know, can you walk us through what those crews are doing there at the Croton Dam so we can let people know what they're seeing if they're driving by?
Yeah, I've not been to that location myself today, so it's hard to say exactly. But I know we have all of our resources focused on really this extreme weather, this significant situation we're seeing, not just near the Croton Dam, but across the state. We have boots on the ground near the Sheboygan Dam, which is facing far more significant concerns right now in northern Michigan. And so, we're really maintaining, monitoring 24/7 to make sure our facilities are working as they should and that things are okay. I can speak to the Houghton Pile Dam, which is on the Manistee River in Wexford County. We are doing some additional erosion control work around the dam today. So, we assess that situation. We make the call if we need to make any sort of updates. And as soon as we hear from any issues with local emergency officials, our people who lead our communities, we're there to respond, provide the best service we can under challenging circumstances.
Okay, and you mentioned Sheboygan County too. If we can quickly touch on the Sheboygan Dam up there, what is the situation up there? We know that I think that's been the one that's really been in the headlines the last couple of days. We heard from Michigan 211 just recently about the calls they're fielding from Sheboygan. Can you talk about that dam? What's the situation there too?
Yeah, and the good news, if there is any difficult situation like this, is that there are a lot of resources being put to work. We're in touch with state and local officials. The state, of course, has declared an emergency situation dealing with flooding across the state. The Sheboygan Dam is run by the Michigan DNR, Department of Natural Resources. Water levels have been rising closer and closer to the top of the dam there. So we're working to make sure we're providing energy to open up spill tubes and generators that can push water through as quickly as possible so that water can get through sooner and spill into Lake Huron. We continue to be on site monitoring, seeing what we can do to assist with that work, as well as making sure that our electrical equipment nearby, you can think about substations, large facilities in the area, that we keep them safe, and we want to make sure we're able to keep power to that community as much as we can. Obviously, everyone, I think, has their hearts. Their thoughts are with Sheboygan, that community, hoping that dam can hold and we get through these next couple of days.
Yeah, of course, that was the Sheboygan Dam we were just talking about. Let's move back to the Croton Dam in Newaygo County, which is what the bulk of our coverage has focused on this morning. You said the Croton Dam is working just fine. Everything's all good. With the dam, we heard from officials that the dam is structurally sound. Are there mitigations in place, or I guess, fail-safes in place should something happen to the Croton Dam over the next couple of days?
Well, we operate these dams 24/7 every day of the year. And so, we build in emergency plans. A lot of our time and effort is spent to make sure that the dams are operating safely, reliably around the clock under normal circumstances. But, we're into situations, of course, where we're preparing, reviewing our emergency plans and building contingencies. We're confident that the dams will remain structurally sound through this week, through this challenging weather time that we're seeing. But if there are any issues that we need to address, we will address them in real time. If there's any information to communicate to the public, that's where people will hear from us or from your local emergency managers.
Yeah.
And beyond just, the ongoing flooding concerns here in West Michigan, I mean, you all have been contending with countless rounds of severe weather, hailstorms, windstorms, 8 tornadoes touching down in the state of Michigan Tuesday night. I mean, how are your crews faring through all of this?
Yeah, we love Michigan, right? But there are times where Michigan weather can definitely, throw a few challenges at us. We saw about 70,000, more than 70,000 homes and businesses were affected by this week's severe weather. We're mindful that's continuing not just today, but even into the weekend. So Consumers Energy is working to restore the power to the last of those customers who've been affected so far. And our commitment doesn't stop there. Electric line workers in particular are people who can work 16 hours at a time. They're committed. We're committed to getting power back on where there's any issues. They work those 16 hours, take 8 hours for rest, and then return to that situation. We certainly hope that the weather can give us a little bit of relief compared to what we've seen in the forecast, but it's our job to be prepared, just like it is yours and all of our communities. If we do see any issues, we will restore power. If you have any issues as a customer, call us 800-477-5050.
All right, and if we are not signed up for those text messages or alerts that can go directly to our phone, how can we do that, especially for those folks that might need those alerts in the coming weeks?
Yeah, this is a good time if you're, if things are normal for you in your household, go to consumersenergy.com/outage. Consumersenergy.com/outage. We have tips, we have information. You can sign up for text alerts, email alerts, so that we can provide information to you in real time if the power does go out. Lastly, making plans for your household is so important, making sure you know what to do in case you do face something out of the ordinary, an emergency. Not just power loss, but of course, flooding or other sorts of concerns that we're talking about here. We want everyone to be safe. We want, at the end of the day, for our coworkers, everyone goes home safely, and that the customers, the people we serve, are okay physically, emotionally, through a very difficult time.
Yeah, and I just want to ask too, and I think Sam has one more question as well, and this might be a tough one for you to answer because this actually just popped up on the Consumers Energy outage map. This is for an area in between Croton and Newaygo, downriver from the Croton Dam. Only 115 customers are impacted right now. Is it tough to say what that could be? It says awaiting assessment from the crews on the ground there, but of course, I just want to make sure that we're covering our bases when it comes to folks over there, and there is an outage of about 115 customers right now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. I have to admit I'm not personally familiar with it, so we will work to get you more information now and throughout the day. Things are evolving, things are happening in real time here, and so our commitment is to make sure we provide you with good information. We do appreciate Channel 13 for getting the word out to the community. We hope people stay informed throughout the day.
And one quick final question for you here. You mentioned that you would potentially shut off power to people whose homes were submerged in water. What would that look like in terms of the time frame that it could take for them, and when would you be able to turn the power back on for those who are potentially underwater?
Yeah, it's a challenging question to consider. There's a lot that goes on in these situations. Like I said, we try to limit the impact in the first place. We don't want to turn off power to anybody more than we should, but we are focusing on the public's safety. So, when those situations evolve, we work with local emergency officials, local leaders. We try to communicate with customers who are involved, and then make sure that the damage, the window of impact passes as quickly as possible. So I'm being a little bit vague here because it's hard to sort of speak to each individual situation, but we're mindful of that. We think about public safety, power shutoff as being something that's related to wildfires we've seen out west. We built contingency plans for those sorts of situations, but that thinking also applies to flooding, where we're trying to limit the danger that comes from electricity contributing to already challenging situations.
All right. Well, Brian Wheeler with Consumers Energy. I know we threw a lot at you. We appreciate all the answers. You're sharing some very helpful information for the viewers, not only in Newaygo County, but of course across the state of Michigan who might be tuning in. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Let's stay in touch. Thanks.
All right. It is 11:39. Let's go now to 13 on your side's Michael Martin joining us live. At last check, he was around the Croton Dam area. Let's join him now. Good morning, Michael. What can you tell us? It looks like you have somebody there with you.
Tanner, Sam, we've moved a little bit. We are now down below the Croton Dam. You can see right there, gauging where we're at right now. There are 8 gates in that dam. 6 of them are open right now. And when we're looking at how this compares to previous events, we want to talk to people who have seen it before. I'm joined by Orville Woodman. Now, what does this look like in terms of things you've seen before? Can you remember a time when they've had 6 gates open?
It seems like in the late 80s, like 86, thereabout, we had a lot of dams going. It was just kind of about where it was back then.
And the way that the Croton Dam works is they have these gates that open and close, and so they've got 6 of them open now. They've got 2 more that they can open, but after that point, there is some concern, right?
Yeah, I would say I'm sure they're all concerned right now. But even with the rain we had last night, it hasn't gotten here yet from a lot of the tributaries. So.
And the environment here, you traveled, 15, 20 minutes you wanted to see what it looked like in person, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a kick,
Yeah.
Nature's power,
it is something fierce to look at. It's pretty incredible to see that water and the force of that water coming out of the dam. And you're certainly not the only one. There's a lot of people here. People are bringing their dogs, their kids. It is a sight, and right now things are safe, and there's no concern right here. But we want to continue to monitor these conditions because it does have the potential to be dangerous if, as Orville mentioned, if we continue to get more rain, more buildup, if they have to open those remaining gates on the Croton Dam and we just don't have the ability to let more water through the dam, that's when the major concerns come. So we continue to monitor these conditions, and as the officials have said, be wary of where you're going. There is a zone below the Croton Dam that has been asked to evacuate several hours ago. So we have that information on our website. Make sure, if you are in the area, that you are not one of those homes that has been asked to evacuate, because when things get dangerous, they get dangerous quickly. So while there are a lot of people checking this out, just be careful today in this area and be mindful. Watch the weather reports. We're going to continue looking into things. We're going to continue to monitor these conditions, and from every vantage point we can, and bring that information to you. For now, though, live in the field, we'll send it back to you guys.
Michael Martin, thank you so much. We are joined now live by Mike Farber, who's the village president in Hesperia. Of course, Hesperia in a different situation. They are along the White River, not the Muskegon River. Correct. So, but we know that the impacts are being felt in the White River, basically because of the rising water levels there as well. I know that they were concerned about some of the areas there along the White River. So, Mike, good morning to you once again. I know Aaron talked to you early this morning. We appreciate you joining us now. As of right now, there is no evacuation in Hesperia, but can you tell us the situation that you guys are experiencing right now?
Right now we have, I'm hearing it now. Right now we got we're just monitoring the river. It's with the water going over it. We've got our spillways are working the way it's supposed to, and that's about the max what we're doing. The fire department has been going down, checking with residents, evaluating damage anybody would have, and it's just a matter of monitoring and waiting to get some good weather.
Yeah, right. I know. We're hoping that at some point we can get you guys some sunshine. We would love to see some too. Can you kind of talk about the arms of the government there in Hesperia at play? You mentioned the firefighters, you mentioned first responders. What is that teamwork like to make sure everybody's okay, even though, you know, we're not at the White River, or at the White River, we're not seeing any sort of evacuations now. We're just, you know, monitoring things. So what does that partnership between all of your departments there look like?
It's a real good relationship. Everybody is working well together. We have, between Oceana and Newaygo counties, everybody works well. You know, the community comes together good, and everything is going really well.
Yeah. What have you been hearing from emergency management officials in your county about the situation on the White River? Are they also monitoring it? And if so, what are their concerns as of right now?
Yeah, emergency responses is monitoring the river right now too, and we're concerned like with bridges, if it gets up to them, if they got to close them. But right now it's just a matter of wait and watch.
Yeah. What does the action plan look like for that area around the White River if you guys have to move or, you know, make moves in any sort of way to evacuate people?
Well, that's something that's coordinated in between emergency responses, the sheriff's departments, and the village. And we've got stuff that our engineers for the village have come up with, you know, different criteria of what to do.
Let me ask you about the Division Street Bridge. We know that water has already impacted that area in Hesperia. Can you talk about the structure? How is that doing? Is it underwater, or is the structure being impacted? What's that look like?
At this time right now, after we took the stop logs out of our dam, it went down and wasn't touching it. but now it's closed. So precaution-wise, we're leaving it closed for just a time. We opened the Michigan bridge because that has more clearage under it.
Okay, yeah, and we know that the water levels have risen significantly since we checked in with you this morning. In your words, how have you seen the water in the White River progress?
This is the worst we've seen in quite a while. You know, we keep getting hit with storm after storm, and so, like I said, right now the dam is handling it and the spillway's handling it. So, as long as we got right now, the sun's out here, and so that's what we need, some dry weather.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we hope to keep that coming for all of you. You mentioned that firefighters were kind of going to different communities and homes and checking in on them. What sorts of damage have you all been finding to residents across the region?
I could not even speak about that. I don't know because they're just going out doing it right now.
Okay. Anything else? I mean, I guess in your position right now, in your eyes, what are you most concerned about right now? Obviously, I think there's a lot at play, especially on both rivers that we're monitoring. But for you specifically in the White River, you know, what are you monitoring yourself, or what are you most concerned about?
My biggest concern is the public safety. That's the biggest thing. Everything else can be replaced and fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. Any resources there in Hesperia people might be able to take advantage of? Or I know that you guys are kind of in an interesting spot. Hesperia, for those that don't know, is kind of in both Newaygo and Oceana counties. So any resources that you would recommend to people in those areas if something happens there on the White River that you know of?
If we have to do an evacuation, the school said that they would open up and make us an evacuation center there if we would have to.
And what's the best place for people to get alerts about the White River there in Hesperia or in Newaygo or Oceana counties or anywhere along that White River floodplain?
Yeah, Oceana emergency responses.
Okay.
Or Newaygo emergency responses.
Okay. Mr. Farber, is there anything else that we didn't ask you that you think is important to let everybody know, especially as it concerns with the White River there?
Nope, I don't believe at this time. It's just everyone be safe, respect the water. It's dangerous.
Yeah, and that's something that we say around here all the time. Respect the polygon, respect the water, you know, have respect to the weather that is playing out around us. I think we all just kind of have to be aware of what's going on. Mike Farber, who is the village president of Hesperia, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
And of course, the White River, we want to make clear in Hesperia, where that dam is, that is just kind of a watch, wait, and see what happens type situation. There is no action that needs to be taken in the village of Hesperia or along the White River right now. Where you do need to take action is if you are along the Muskegon River, downstream of the Croton Dam and around the Muskegon River floodplain. So that is the action that needs to happen if you're in that floodplain of the Muskegon River, downstream of the Croton Dam. Evacuation alert in place right now.
And you know what, Tanner, I think it's time that maybe we check on the forecast, right? Because unfortunately, I wish that I could say that the sunshine that's going to start to develop across the region this afternoon and evening and into tomorrow was going to stick around, but we do actually still have another significant amount of rainfall within the next 72 hours here in West Michigan. And it's still actively raining for a good chunk of the area as well. So that is, of course, why our weather ball is blinking green. We have no change foreseen in our temperatures, but we do continue to monitor our chances for showers in sight. Live look over Muskegon, you can see some droplets on the lens there, but it doesn't look to be actively raining. So that's fantastic news. Starting to see some drier conditions settle into place for some of our northern counties. Those of us in Kent County, though, stretching down through Berry County, northern portions of Allegan, certainly not the case. I mean, I have been monitoring closely different Facebook pages and organizations to see what the areas that were impacted by the tornadic activity earlier this week are doing, and all of them are saying, like, we want to start picking up the pieces. We want to start rebuilding as a community. And unfortunately, they're waiting for the weather to break. Now, here's the deal. Once we get past this little cluster of showers right now that's over Lake Michigan, which will come closer to 2 to 4 p.m., we will be back underneath dry conditions throughout the duration of your Friday. The only thing is that we have another round of showers and even thunderstorms in the forecast by as early as Saturday. So this is a glimpse here at 4 o'clock this afternoon. You can see sunny skies beginning to develop along the lakeshore's edge, wet conditions continuing to push out. But until that point, we could still continue to see discrete thunderstorm cells across our area. So we cannot count out the chance for more wet weather in today's forecast, at least not for the next couple of hours here. Now we fast forward to 9 p.m. on Friday night. Now there's still a little bit of disagreement in models in terms of when this rainfall is expected to arrive, but I would anticipate certainly after midnight on Friday into your Saturday morning to expect wet weather to return to the forecast, if not a little bit earlier. Note here in our model guidance, this is once again moderate to heavy rainfall. This is not going to be run-of-the-mill rain that moves through, and potentially even some storms embedded within this. My guard is down a little bit in terms of I don't necessarily anticipate very strong severe weather, maybe an isolated severe storm to be squeezed out of that. It's going to again be the flooding concerns that we monitor. It should be quick hitting, but the fact that these rainfall chances are going to be loaded, right? We're going to see some relatively impressive rainfall totals in that short period of time, resulting in our rivers likely cresting come Saturday morning. But this is 9 a.m. Good signs that we will start to dry out once we start to hit daybreak on Saturday, and then starting to see some of those clear conditions funnel in behind that. If we look at some rainfall totals, here's what we've got left for today. Now, the good news is that we're seeing drier conditions settle into place for portions of the Muskegon River in Newaygo County, maybe a couple hundredths of an inch of rainfall left to the north, unless they see a discrete thunderstorm cell pop up. But in terms of the bulk of this precip that's moving through right now, they should not anticipate any more of that to come through the area. As for Kent County, which we do have some fresh river flood warnings for large portions of Kent County's Grand River, the Rogue River as well, and then extending down into the Thornapple River, we still have another 0.3 of an inch to potentially even higher, right? These numbers aren't perfect. They're showing some areas shaded in blue. So if you look over here at our blue shades on our precipitation forecast, that's when you start to enter in another 0.5 inch plus of rainfall anticipated today. Dry conditions through Friday, so we're not adding anything just yet, but then here we go. We've got another 0.5 inch to potentially, upwards of an inch if we do see some thunderstorm cells. It's not giving quite as much to our northern counties, but time and time again, we've seen models be a little bit off in the placement of these rainfall chances. So everybody in West Michigan should expect some rain in the near-term forecast, at least through Saturday. Here's the really, really good news, everyone. Once we get past Saturday, we have a mainly dry forecast through middle to end of next week. I do not see any significant weather makers in sight during that duration of time. So that is really fantastic news. We likely will start to see drier conditions. We just have to get through Saturday first, where we do have those thunderstorm chances in the very early morning hours, more so overnight Friday into Saturday, and then we start to dry out from there. So we continue on with our 13 weather impact alert